So, hi everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unpacking Possibility. I'm your host, Traci Stein, as always. I'm so happy to be here with you. You know, when I was thinking about what to talk about tonight, it occurred to me that something that's unfortunately universal is self-imposed suffering. So, what I wanted to talk about today is, I think, probably 5 causes of self-imposed suffering. And the thing that I think is such a powerful remedy, it's free, it's something you can do really almost any time. And I think it's worth doing. And I want to say that as someone who is not coming from a position of blame by any means, but more that it's just a normal human condition, right? That we do things that can actually make us feel worse than we really want to. So, without further ado, let me get into the list, because again, I think it's so important to get away from some of these things, or at least be more aware of them, because there's so much cause for suffering in the world, especially now. I don't even have to detail it. You all know what I'm talking about. It's the most tense time I can remember in my lifetime, and I've been around a while. But we can do things to change our inner experience for the better. Okay, let's get to the list. So, number 1 cause of self-imposed suffering is worrying excessively about what other people think. Now, it's important to be aware, of course, of how we impact people. I think it's worth caring about how we affect others. That's not what I'm talking about. And I realize it's kind of a fine line, but I'm talking about when we're obsessively worrying about what other people think and trying to control what other people think, either by being overly perfect or trying to be. We know that's not even a real thing, right? Even if we think it could be, we know it's not. No such thing as perfect, not worth devoting a ton of energy to that. But we can try to present that way anyway, or in some way that we think will protect us from others' judgments or negative thoughts about us. Just so you know, it not only is it a completely impossible task to be perfect, but people will judge us no matter what, right? And a lot of times it will be their stuff. And sometimes it will be stuff that we're doing that maybe, okay, it's not the best thing. We'll talk about that a few items down the list. But you can't control how other people evaluate you. And so it's not a great investment of your time and energy. It's really draining to do that. You know, it's good to get feedback sometimes. Sometimes we will do things and other people won't love it, and they'll give us feedback, and maybe we can learn something, right? That's part of how we grow. But worrying obsessively and excessively about what other people think, it's number 1. Can't control what other people think. And as the saying goes, what other people think of you is none of your business. What a great thing that is. So just allow yourself to put that one on the side. A lot of the other items on this list will be related to that, as you'll see in a moment. Number 2, comparing ourselves to where we imagine other people are. Now, notice the language I'm using, where we imagine other people are, right? Because as my husband likes to say, don't count other people's money. That's a little saying of his, because it's a tendency we all have, right? And even if you think you don't do this, it's not just other people's money, it's other people's happiness, it's other people's, whatever you think that they have that is better than what you have. Look, some of it might be objectively so. If you're talking about, Jeff Bezos, who owns Amazon, he's going to have more money than you and me and everyone we know put together and then some, right? Do I know if his life is better? I actually don't know. and it's not even relevant. But we tend to do this more often with either celebrities or with people we know, right? Because you open up Instagram or some other social media app, or you hear a conversation at a gathering or whatever, and you look at how people you know and people you don't know are doing. And if you are stressed about something, and I don't know whether it's money, if it's opportunities, it could be any kind of opportunity, a professional opportunity, a social opportunity, a vacation opportunity. It's so easy to feel inadequate, right? Inadequate financially, inadequate in terms of your happiness, in terms of your relationship, because you're looking at other people's best version of their stuff. This isn't new, but it's still worth saying because we all still suffer from it, right? But we open up Instagram or TikTok or Facebook if you're older, so I hear, or something else, and somebody else is on a great vacation. Maybe it's better than the vacation you are taking, or maybe you're not able to take one right now. Or they're wearing incredible clothing, or maybe they look spectacular in it. Or they're embarking on some other recreational adventure. And, if we're worried about our appearance excessively, there's pretty much no way that we can connect with other people, either online or in person, people you know, again, and people you don't, without seeing examples of how put together or stunningly beautiful some other person or people may be. Right? And that can extend to their lives, right? Their businesses, how much fun it looks like they're having, how easy it seems like their days are. General life envy. And we all have it because it's normal to have some of that. But notice what things are triggers for you, and that might change over time. Some of it might be fundamental. If you grew up with a particular challenge, somebody who looks like they have comparative ease around something, that might always be something of a trigger for you, but it doesn't have to be as big a trigger as it is maybe today. Opportunities, partners, somebody who just seems to be happy. It doesn't even have to be specific. Or they're really skilled at something. But comparisons, again, are really only helpful if they motivate us or inspire us in some healthy way. Now, a little bit of envy, right? We envy that somebody else has, something that looks like it's what we want, but feel a sense of lack around. I mean, it could even be health, right? Or maybe it's jealousy. Somebody's friends with someone and you're thinking, how come I'm not better friends with this person? It could be anything. And social media just takes something that existed before, but it has blown it up to a proportion that's almost incomprehensible. But it can even be something outside of that. I'm going to give you an example of something in my own life just to let you know that it can be anything. So I'm one of those people who can take way too long to get a project done. Even in college, I remember I would put things off or feel like the paper wasn't good enough. And my husband and I actually went to school together, and he would be like, I don't know how you can turn in a paper late and get a worse grade rather than turning it in on time as it is. This is a long time ago. But it's hard to let go of something if you feel like it's not, quote, perfectly done or done enough or good enough, or you're afraid it reflects badly on you if there's something that's not quite polished enough, whatever it is. So I'm admitting I have been that person, but it could be anything. And invariably the time kind of starts to run out and you get distracted by other things, or you feel like you need to read more or learn more or whatever. And then it's just something maybe you don't get done at all. Has this happened to you? It's not going to resonate with everybody, but I bet it resonates with a lot of people. And I remember this time in the past, this is the personal example. This is many, many years ago now, but someone I'll refer to as a colleague who had formerly been a friend, or I thought they had been a friend, but this is a very transactional person, in my opinion. And I felt like they had done something really shady. And I won't go into detail about it. It's not worth it. It doesn't matter at this point. But they had kind of done something really shady. And I felt like completely just like, oh my God, I can't believe I thought of this person as a friend. And then, time moves on and you move on. And then I remember I was really, I'd been using guided imagery and doing it informally or in session for a long time. And I hadn't really put it out into the wider world. I hadn't even thought like I could be somebody who could do that. And that's my own stuff, but we all have our stuff. So I'm just sharing it with you. But I remember seeing that, like I'd gotten like an email or something, you're on one of these marketing email lists, and I'd seen that this person had put out a guided imagery album with other people through a well-known publisher. And I remember just my heart had dropped into my stomach. You know that feeling, right? Because I thought, oh my God. And this person hadn't ever really been even into guided imagery too much. I'd never heard them mention it. And I knew them well enough to know that. And I don't think they even really listened to it. But one of the things this person was really good at that maybe I'm less good at or was less good at, I think probably still am, is that they're really great at creating advantageous professional and personal relationships. If there's an advantage to them to getting to know somebody, this person is really good at very quickly cultivating a very warm relationship. I don't think they do that if there's no advantage, but that's an aside. But the point isn't even that, because what somebody else does isn't really relative. It's not really relevant to us, but all things are relative, right? In the way that they affect us. And whatever my perception is or was of this person really doesn't matter. And I don't think this person would give 2 moments thought to what I think of them, but I digress. But anyway, I saw that their album had come out with that particular publisher, and it was an album with other kind of people who were very established in that world. And my heart just sank because I thought, oh, wow, I have really wanted to do that, to get my guided imagery out there on some level. Maybe secretly I wanted to. And now this person who doesn't even really care about it has done it. And it wasn't even so much envy. It was feeling bad about myself because it's like, God, why couldn't I do that? Or why didn't I do that? Or what if my stuff is not good enough to do it? And if you notice the number of I's in there, that's our ego getting involved. And that just kind of gets in the way, especially if you're doing something that is designed to really be of service. But we're all human. I'm owning it. But anyway, the value in that experience, and this is why I'm sharing it with you, is that it got me to get off my butt and just stop worrying. And I just reminded myself, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Let me see what I'm actually willing to put out in the world, even if it's not, quote, perfect. And the rest is history, because, of course, now I've got quite a few albums out there. I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunities I've had, truly. And I can't tell you how great I feel when somebody says, thank you for doing this imperfect thing. I'm saying the imperfect part because it's helped me to get through a difficult time, or it's helped me to be kinder to myself. There is nothing better than that. And my imperfect thing being out in the world, if it does that for one person, it sounds corny, but it's true. It's worth it. And me worrying about what other people will think because it's not good enough, or, wallowing in comparisons, is just a bad use of my energy, and it gets in the way of doing anything of value, honestly. So I think you probably know what I mean. it's important if comparisons help us to get off of our butts and get out of our own way. Perfect or not, we know there's no such thing. But comparison for the sake of just feeling, oh God, I'm not there. It's just a waste of energy. And when we remind ourselves of that, it's very liberating. Okay, number 3. Another way we cause our own suffering, living in the past. Now, my disclaimer is that many of you know I take a broader view of time, so I don't think it's always linear. I do believe that we can actually send love and healing to ourselves at all points in time and have it have a real effect. And if you want to hear more about that, my other podcast with Kathy Kelly, Curious Explorers, may be a little on the paranormal side for a lot of you, but there's an episode on retrocausality. And that is the idea that what we do in the future can affect us in the now, and what we do in the now can affect our past, possibly for the better. So feel free to check that out. But for all intents and purposes for this conversation, our day-to-day lives are largely bound by or lived in linear time. That's what we're working with. So that just means the present is now, the future has yet to happen, and the past, it's kind of done. So once you've done something, if it's wonderful, it's still done. If it's regrettable or not up to your standards, done, still done. If it gives you pleasure to reflect on where you were at one point and how far you've come, I think that is actually really important. It can help us reconnect to feelings of joy, of satisfaction, of pride, of gratitude, right? That is a good way to step back into the past for the time being. So if it makes you smile to remember something that maybe is gone for you, but it makes you feel good, it's definitely worth reflecting on and cherishing beautiful memories. But not to the extent that when we can't be in this moment because of it. Because this is the one moment, the now, that we have. That's it. For all intents and purposes, and for the purposes of this discussion, the now, this very moment, is where things change. It's where you might plan for the future, make meaning of and grow from your past. It's where you can gain greater awareness, learn, grow. But to be completely honest, the other stuff is not the place you should live. The place you should live is in the now. I know a lot of people, and I can do this myself, especially really conscientious people, especially people who grew up in households where there was a lot of criticism or pressure to be perfect, but, people who tend to be more on the anxious end of the spectrum. But just generally, a lot of us will wake up in the middle of the night and ruminate and suffer and punish ourselves about things we wish we'd done better, the stuff in the past. We could be suffering about something someone said to us that hurt our feelings. That's a different kind of suffering, right? And we'll get to that in a moment. That's more of the kind of suffering about some injustice. And I mean more in your day-to-day interpersonal realm rather than what's going on globally for the purposes of this discussion. But you might feel so bad about something you did that you should not have done, or something that you should have done differently. You might believe you should have done something and perhaps you didn't. But these regrets really don't serve us beyond the learning. And, the regrets tend to be more painful, I think, when another person involved has passed away, or they've moved on. So there's not an ability to repair the relationship or cherish the relationship because, again, for all intents and purposes, it's come to its conclusion. Please know that everyone makes mistakes, everyone screws things up, even people who have a really strong moral compass and try really hard to be good people will find that sometimes their emotions get the best of them. Their humanity gets the best of them. And they do something that they wish they had done differently. And we really can't escape that, even with our best intentions. We come into this life, our souls come into these human existences. And it's so painful sometimes. But even if we believe or strive to be better than something we did, all that does, it just makes us human. And the value in those experiences, again, learning and growing from them, but the suffering part, the obsessing part, it's detrimental to our well-being. You don't get bonus morality points for beating yourself up. That's a hard one for some people to understand because it can feel like, well, if I let myself get off the hook, which is very different from making meaning and moving forward, right? But people can feel like if they don't continue to suffer, that they'll either screw up again, and that's anxiety usually, or they feel like they'll somehow there'll be a moral failing in letting themselves get away from something without paying for it. You know what I mean? And I don't even mean these big transgressions because a lot of times the people who commit a lot of big transgressions don't necessarily feel bad about them. Or they might momentarily have a flicker of regret and then move on. I'm talking about the people who tend to really strive to be good people. But again, we're all human. Everybody messes up. But the suffering doesn't help us grow. It really doesn't. Doesn't make us better people. And I want to just interject a little bit of the hypnosis piece in here too, because, most of you know that I do a lot of hypnosis. And I've talked before about us all moving in and out of hypnotic states, innumerable times a day. Your mind and body often don't fully distinguish between what is, quote, real right now in the here and now, and what is literally just the workings of your own mind. So dwelling on the past, it's your emotions driving a completely mental journey, a completely mental experience that then triggers negative emotions, and it makes your body react as if the suffering is happening all over again. So that's number 3 in terms of causes of suffering. Don't live in the past. Don't dwell on it. You don't need to. Number 4, related to number 3, is dwelling on what other people have done to you. And it's so hard because the things other people do to us can be quite dramatic. And that, it changes our brains and wires us to be hypervigilant for something similarly terrible to happen to us. And dramatic really isn't the word. I mean something that is like a shock to the nervous system. So traumatic events, and this could be everything from abuse to betrayal, right? A betrayal can be a series of awful things that someone does over time that makes you question reality or feel completely unsettled and unnerved. It can make you doubt your ability to judge a person. That's one type of kind of shock to the nervous system. But there are lots of them. Even just this is kind of like an awful experience that I think most people have not only had themselves, but have been guilty of, is talking negatively about somebody else. And I'll get to that in a moment. But if you've ever overheard somebody saying something not nice about you, it's not the worst trauma. Again, given what's going on in the world, please know that I'm speaking in a very specific everyday context here. But it can feel awful. And so we can dwell on things almost as a way to protect ourselves from ever winding up in that situation again. Unrelated to that, but a different way of suffering about what somebody's done to us is being an outrage junkie. And you know what I mean. And we all know people like that, and many of us have been like that. And please know I'm not coming from a place of judgment, but outrage junkies, and you know if this is you, because you'll feel kind of like an excitement or a high. It's like a dopamine hit that we get from knowing that we are morally superior to someone else we know, right? And this can be in the form of really looking for things to criticize about other people, right? So sitting in judgment, looking for, and this could be anything from judging somebody's appearance, which I find honestly awful. It's one of the, I think, just lowest levels of self-entertainment is sitting looking for reasons to criticize somebody else's appearance. If, please don't do it. And I think most of the people who listen to this podcast probably don't, honestly. But I think we've all experienced somebody like that, or somebody who's always looking to find where somebody else is, quote, not good enough, or to take something that somebody else said or did or didn't do or didn't say and find what's not great about it and amplify it because they get a high out of it, right? That's one reason. Another reason is to just so you don't miss the negative things that are going on around you and that you are prepared and protected in a way. That's a different way of noticing everything else that's somebody's doing that's negative, right? But you can do that to feel less vulnerable. But when people are outrage junkies, and again, I don't mean about larger societal issues, although that can also feed something. We need to call things like we see it. We need to know when things aren't right. We need to have a moral compass that informs us that something is wrong. And there's so much going on in the world that is wrong. Please know I know that. That's not even what I mean. That's not the level we're talking about here. I'm talking about feeling better about yourself because in a way it's another form of status seeking to be morally superior to your neighbor or your friend or your family member. Sometimes it's judginess about knowing that you have to be, you have to have the most expensive or fanciest handbag. This is a stupid example, but you know what I mean. It can be anything. Or throw the most exclusive party, or you've got to one-up people in your neighborhood and judge them for not being able to do it. Or you've got to, people do this even about attendance at religious services. Who doesn't show up regularly enough, or who doesn't donate enough, or that sort of thing, right? But it could be, people do this about other people's children, other people's kids maybe not being neat and tidy enough, or not doing as well as your kid in school. And it's kind of like, or somebody says the wrong thing and you blow it up out of proportion, or, they show up to your home and, don't bring something, or I'm just thinking of the things I've heard people talk about over the years that people get really bent out of shape about, and they're not that big a deal. They're not worth devoting mental time and energy to, right? But outrage junkies get a hit, like this drug-like hit out of being the most righteous or the better than. I'm thinking, everybody knows people like this, and maybe we've all been like this at some point, but I'm thinking people that I've known for decades that every once in a blue moon, I have to interact with them socially, but it's rare. And I'm always kind and polite to them because it's important to me that that's how I treat them. I'm respectful when I see them, but I minimize how often I do it because I don't feel safe in their presence. And I've kind of limited friendships over this. Because if you don't feel safe with somebody because they're looking for a way to feign outrage or find a way to diminish you, this is kind of moving into another aspect of this, but it just feels bad. It feels bad to be in their presence. And it's their stuff. They're looking for a reason to prop themselves up. Everybody's reasons for being the way they are. But again, it's no different than being addicted to some other substance or behavior. And I mean that because, again, our brains light up with excitement at the thought of calling out someone else. At the end of the day, this can cause you suffering, right? Because it causes suffering to people around you. Maybe it makes a partner or a family member uncomfortable, or maybe you're just going to feel miserable because you're focused on what is negative about other people, and it can actually make you wind up feeling kind of hopeless, even if you feel superior. Or it could be that people are just less available to you because it's hard for them to trust you or be around you because they know on some level that they can't measure up. So that doesn't mean when someone does something awful that we can and shouldn't call it as we see it or set limits. That is not what I'm talking about. It's that addiction to being judgy Judy that can really wind up alienating us from other people. And again, we've all had those moments. I really do believe that. Some people just do it way more often. But yeah, if your body, by the way, is in a state of outrage all the time, aside from the excitement of being better than because somebody else is kind of failing in some way in comparison, that's a lot for your body to sustain. And I've seen people get really outraged over super stupid stuff. Tell me if you've noticed this. There's a Seinfeld episode, I think, where they serve coffee and no cake or cake with no coffee. You can tell that I am kind of not a TV literate person, and that's a long time ago. But I remember actually going to an event and, going to this event for somebody's family member, bringing a gift, sitting through not the most exciting event, and there was cake and no coffee, which was hilarious. And my husband and I joke about it because he was like, oh my God, there's cake and no coffee. Like he just, and obviously we could go out and get a coffee, but, people can get crazy bent out of shape about stuff that is so not worth it. And you know what? Sometimes people will choose to take stupid stuff really personally. Like, oh my God, they didn't care about us enough to serve cake with their coffee or vice versa. You think I'm making this up, but everybody knows somebody like this, or you will. A more, I think, painful example is the person who always has to cut somebody down or give the backhanded compliment. So not only are they judgy Judy, but they have to say something loosely framed as a compliment, but it's designed to be hurtful, and they want you to know that you don't measure up. And if, again, we're all human. If you've done this, all right, I'm talking about the people who are doing it all the time. That feeling when someone's trying to diminish you, or even the feeling when you feel like angry at someone and you feel not like you're not permitted to communicate that. So you do this backhanded compliment. Oh, those shoes aren't my taste, but they seem to be a good fit for you. Enjoy them. That kind of thing. So just let people be that way. We don't need to be outraged about everything people do in our daily lives. They're taking, if we go down that road, aside from getting our blood pressure boiling, our guts in an uproar, as they say, those thoughts and emotions take up such precious real estate in your mind and heart. When you're preoccupied with that, you're not enjoying your life to the extent you could be. And you're not enjoying the people around you to the extent you could be. So limit the time you spend with nasty people. Understand that not everything is personal. And, again, spend more time with the people and the things that feel like they bring you joy. There's mutual respect. And if you're feeling that you're outraged by things that you yourself would say, you know what, maybe it's not worth it, just something worth paying attention to, because you can reduce your suffering if you give that a little vacation. Okay, number 5, related to number 4, and really the others too, is assuming the worst without examining whether it could be your stuff. So it's really similar again to number 4. It's worth saying, assuming the worst about somebody else's intentions. That's kind of what I'm talking about here. So maybe, a common example is you're planning something and somebody doesn't get back to you right away to let you know they're coming, or maybe they don't get back to you at all because, we all have texts and voicemails and emails that get lost in the ether. And sometimes we're just overwhelmed, right? So we miss things. And also there are people who are just really bad at getting back to you. And even though it's not the greatest sign of respect to not get back to people. And I've been guilty of that as well. Many times. But it's not worth dwelling on the worst possible thing that could mean, right? A lot of these examples are interpersonal because I feel like that's where these things come up. You invite friends or family for dinner and, the invitation to this household is just for 2 people and now they're bringing 5 more. And maybe they just assume that's fine. And maybe you're like, hey, I'm sorry, it's just a small gathering. If your 7 cousins are visiting, maybe they could come another time. I'm just having a few people over, whatever. I'm making this up. And you text them this and they take a while to get back to you. Or maybe they text you back, but they're a little offended, right? And now you're anxious. You're afraid they won't like you. Or you're waiting for the text back and you're running through every negative scenario in your mind. And maybe it's both outrage. How dare they, why would they think they could bring their 7 cousins and the 7 cousins' partners? Or maybe you're thinking, oh, they probably think I should just, that they don't even have to check in with me. Our minds can kind of spiral. But again, we're assuming the worst in their intentions, and now we're assuming that they will react in a way that will make us feel bad or us look bad, and right? Maybe they get back to you a week later because they didn't see the text, or maybe they had a lot going on, or maybe the whole thing is just not a big deal to them. Maybe they thought they responded to you. Or maybe your worst fear is true and they are really upset and they, do think something negative about you. Well, we would have no problem with this. Why should you? Right? And I'm going to tell you, honestly, it doesn't actually even matter what their intentions are, or what their feelings are, or what even plays out with this whole situation. We always think it does, but all these things are such small potatoes, given what's, again, going on in the world. In the scheme of our lives, it's a blip on our timeline, and it's actually a pretty benign type of blip, right? But if we spend a ton of time between the time we send the text and the time we wait for it to come back, And we go through all of these mental gyrations about what could be negative and get more and more amped up. We've all done that. We've now wasted precious time of our lives suffering about something that we don't even know what it really is. And that it wouldn't be a huge deal anyway, at the end of the day. You're not going to look back on your life on your last day and be like, God, I wish that didn't happen. No, it's not going to take up and it shouldn't take up important mental real estate. Or maybe they get back to you 5 days later and they're like, okay, oh, sure, I didn't realize this was a problem. Thanks for letting me know. See you soon, right? You don't need to suffer in the interim. You don't need to catastrophize, which is just the psychology way of saying take something and make it a million times worse and more catastrophic than it really is. You don't need to be anxious. You don't need to waste energy suffering ahead of time for something that maybe will, maybe won't happen. And honestly, if your worst fear is realized and they're mad at you, I think what we forget is that a momentary interaction with somebody or an emotional experience they have or we have, these things tend to be very dynamic. They're changeable. There's opportunity for repair. So I'm sure you could think of other ways that we cause our own suffering. Maybe one more is just generally worrying about the future or trying to perfectly control it. I guess this would be number 6. You and I know we can't do that. We can't control the future perfectly. It's not possible. And again, it pulls us out of the present. That's where the change happens. It's where the joy happens. It's where the sadness happens and everything else that makes our lives human. It's where we exist. We exist in the now. And I can't tell you how much time I've wasted worrying about trying to make everything under my control in the future. And again, this is a thing that people who've grown up with a lot of anxiety, who've had anxious parents, or parents who had impossibly high standards, or hypercritical families, or just wired for anxiety, and that happens too. We waste a lot of time doing that, trying to put the vice grip on how the future comes out. It's funny, I had a party at my house. It seems very party themed, but anyway, I had a party at my house a few months ago, and I actually shocked myself because although I definitely had moments of stress with people not responding on time, people responding late, or, oh no, I wonder what the weather is going to be like, or, if it rains, are we all going to be stuck inside, or if it's too hot, or, is anything going to be overly difficult to deal with that day? Is the food going to be okay? Will everybody like it? And I feel silly talking about this now, but it was actually a birthday party for my parents' 80th birthday, disclosure, and months went into planning it. What's so funny though is even though I did have some worry about it, I experienced so much less suffering than I even imagined I would, because I wasn't worried as much as I would have been in the past. And I think honestly, a lot of it is just a product of getting older and having more life and experience behind me, right? Because again, as time goes by, we have a different context. Our context, like the container of our lives, is so much bigger. And everything in it is redefined in a way. But you don't have to wait for that. You don't have to wait for a ton of time to go by to be able to put things in perspective, right? And again, just using the party example, if somebody brings 5 extra guests, it's not the end of the world, even if it's frustrating. Guess what? In my family, if you run out of food, that would be like, people would be talking about you. People would be talking about you maybe for years, some of them. And it's still not the end of the world. By the way, we had plenty of extra food, but that's not the point. The point is, it's not a big deal. There's so many bigger fish to fry. Um, it's something we can deal with. Most things in our daily lives we can deal with, especially day-to-day interpersonal things. We can't control everything. When my aunt and uncle, who were there, got married, which is now, I feel like it might be like 40 years ago. I remember the day of their wedding because I was, I was a kid and I was in the bridal party. I was super excited. This is just an aside. And on the way to the catering hall, the van carrying their whatever multi-tier wedding cake must have had to stop short in traffic. And that you can imagine what happened. The cake slid forward and got destroyed. So now they've paid, probably a lot, it's probably a big part of their budget for this wedding cake. All the guests are there. I don't even remember if there was other dessert. I'm sure there probably was, but the cake that was it. I don't even know if they were able to save like the top. And you know what? They're still happy. They have a beautiful family. People didn't get their cake that day. It's sad that they didn't have a wedding cake, but you know what? It doesn't matter. In the scheme of things, it would feel really bad then. I'm sure it felt really stressful and disappointing then, but it hasn't affected their lives. Most things, for most people, thankfully, are like that, or even less so. So even if you apply for a job or you apply to school or you're setting up a date, a first date, or whatever it is you're thinking about in the future, maybe you're meeting your partner's family for the first time in the future. I know these are important things, but you can only do so much work in the present. And then you have to kind of let it go because it hasn't happened yet. And there are an infinite number of things that could change, that could affect the outcome. And they will change before any point in the future. That's how it works. You cannot perfectly control anything, even if you work so hard and you do everything, quote, in the right way. If you can find a way to prepare without obsessing, and leave space inside of you and in your life for things to come out differently than you think you want them to be, you will notice that you will feel so much less anxiety, you will suffer so much less, you will discover so much more joy. Now, I know that's been a lot, but what I want to do also is, I want to talk about something that can be super helpful. It is completely free. It's one of the most powerful things you can do, honestly. And I'm saying that as someone who has done this and has recommended this to people I know, patients, and so forth. Do not underestimate the impact of this, the positive impact, just because it's so simple. And that simple technique is to send love to the situation. Now, I'm using the term situation broadly. The situation is you and your feelings. The situation is the interaction you've had with somebody or the thing you hope will go a certain way or the way you fear it will go, whatever it is. And if you can't send love to the people in this situation, right? Someone's really wronged you. It's what it is. If you can, terrific. If you don't think you can send love to them now, sending love to the situation is still so healing because, I feel like I can't overstate it. It can be almost miraculous in terms of the effect it will have on you and what it will do for you. And I actually feel like there is this kind of mystical component, this energetic component. Um, so in the beginning, I would say please set aside some quiet time, even if it's just a few minutes, just so that you can allow your focus to be in this inner space. And then the more you do it, the less you'll even need to do that. You'll be able to be walking and have part of your mind engage in this technique. But initially, make some quiet time, even if you have to go in your bathroom and lock the door. If you live with other people, you might want to just do that, or get up a little earlier than everyone else, or stay up a little later so you have some alone time, or go take a walk and sit somewhere. Could be on a park bench, doesn't matter. But allow yourself to notice things, as you sit quietly. And now allow yourself to notice things that you're worried about or that you're suffering over. You do not have to push them away. You don't have to try and force them to change. That usually does not work anyway. But I want you instead to imagine that you're creating a beautiful space, kind of like a painter painting on a canvas, right? Or just creating a movie in your mind. Your mind is made to do that. Your brain is made to do that. Maybe your beautiful space is a sphere of light, right? That's almost like a snow globe for this scene that will unfold. A beautiful bubble, or maybe just a lovely and calming scenario, a favorite place. It really doesn't matter. Just let it be whatever works for you. Allow the situation or the parts of it that feel most stressful to kind of be ensconced inside this safe and sacred space. And allow yourself to send love to the parts that you can, whatever that is in the moment. Now, if somebody's done something really wrong to you, again, it can be so hard to send them love. So send love to the situation, the greater container that everything is in, everything that is taking place or has taken place or you wonder might take place. If you can send love to the person or people who have hurt you, you are a much more evolved person. And I am than most people you will ever meet. And I'm beyond impressed. And I mean that. And if you practice things like loving kindness, sending love to ourselves, to others who've hurt us, to others who we care for, to all beings, it's a wonderful and beneficial practice to do. But just notice any resistance that comes up and breathe through it. Don't try to force anything. I really do think and believe that the energy of sending love, kindness, healing to the situation on its own, I feel like that can work miracles. And what you may notice pretty early on is that doing that automatically sends that loving, healing energy to you. You will feel it, and it may bring up emotion. It may bring up some tears. Don't force any feelings that you don't feel like you have. Just notice. And imagine seeing that light and that love enveloping yourself, the whole situation. At any point in time, it really doesn't matter. This is where the time isn't linear and it doesn't matter. Maybe you are sending love from your own heart center. Maybe you're just wishing for love and a positive healing outcome. Maybe you're sending divine or universal love. If you think of this in terms of God and your angelic beings, whatever it is, that's what you send. Your higher self really doesn't matter. Just allow and observe. This is truly one of the most transformative things you can do. And if I were to add anything to that, again, if it's multisensory for you, even better, whether it's light that you're seeing envelop the situation, or just a feeling or essence or trust, doesn't matter. There's no pressure for you to actually see this visually, but if you do, great. And if you really want to supercharge this experience, honestly, send the energy of forgiveness as well. And start with sending it to you at all points in time. So if you said something to another kid in your class in fifth grade, and once in a while in the middle of the night, that pops up in your mind as emblematic of something you need to work on, send love to that kid and send love to you, yourself at that time. Forgive yourself. You can be perfectly imperfect and still wonderful. Send that love and forgiveness to yourself in the future. Send it to yourself at all points in time. Just notice what pops up on the screen of your mind. And it might even be something insignificant, seemingly. You might not have thought about it in a million years. Just notice. Send it love. Send forgiveness. And breathe. And remember, again, it doesn't have to be a huge, long production. Notice how long it feels like it's just right for you. It might be 30 minutes. It might be 2 minutes. But when you experience yourself struggling, just send that love, that compassion, and that forgiveness. And if you find this helpful, leave me a comment. Let me know. As I've been saying lately, I do this for me and I do this for you. I want it to be helpful. So if there's something you'd like me to talk about in a future episode, let me know. And as always, until next time, know that I appreciate you and I wish you all the very best.